Thank you very much to Stéphane and Jean-Christophe. And now we would like to invite Mr. Dimond to make your presentation. I think, well, I'll make quite an effort to get by in French. It's therefore good that an Anglophone from Toronto and a member of our distinguished panel should be able to has studied is working at the University of Quebec, and I'm proud to have studied at the University of Montreal. My question is the role of provinces in our federation and the international aspect, and this flows from the fact that it is a dimension of federalism, and it is something that has been built and which at the beginning arose from Quebec and from the fact Quebec's presence in the Federation, but there are 9 other provinces and 3 territories now, and then therefore there is less space for somebody to talk for the other 12 jurisdictions. But it is true that there is, if there would have been far less space for international relations for provinces if Quebec hadn't started the debate at the beginning by raising this issue.
When you look at the pendulum of Prime Minister's orientation to federalism and international relations, on voit que Pearson.
We see that Pearson, firstly, had major challenges, faced major challenges vis-à-vis Quebec, and we're now experiencing a leadership party, a leadership race in the Liberal Party of Canada. And when Trudeau was elected leader of the Liberal Party, that was partly in response to the challenge posed by Quebec to our federation. So Trudeau arrived with a viewpoint on the place of provinces in our federation and a viewpoint on provinces' role in international relations. And Trudeau was very strict. If we want to see the federal government as a father, and when Mulroney arrived, we will recall that he said this is the time for a new federalism. And that sounded very much as the way Harper sounds today. Then when Chrétien was elected, he had already been a very powerful minister in Trudeau's government, and he had a different orientation as far as provinces and international relations were concerned. And interestingly, as somebody said, Prime Minister Martin, when he was a Liberal leader in opposition, he started the approach, the Mulroney approach, that is, the more open approach towards provinces, but he also hesitated in a way that Harper doesn't seem to hesitate, because it is Harper who accepted to, as the former minister Baudouin explained, that Quebec should have a greater role within UNESCO. So that is the context within which we might understand the
parts there, and you have to look at the larger context, orientation, situation that we are living through as this pendulum goes back and forth. But my job is not just to provide the larger context or to obviously talk about Quebec. I think I do this better in French. The Council of Federations, I think, is an important place to start in moving on to look at those other subnational jurisdictions in Canada. The Council of Federations was formed in 2004. Interestingly, a brainchild of Jean Charest. Once again, you can see in a practical sense the impact of Quebec. And the idea was that the provinces could speak together without the federal government. one of the co-chairs of the Council of Federations is Alberta, and I gather through my digging around that it was actually, and I know we have a representative from Alberta here at the conference, maybe want to follow up with a comment from the floor, but I gather it was Alberta, and this is interesting because Madame Baudouin has made this point at the outset of her remarks about how Alberta is part of this piece, and don't just think about Quebec is some outlier. And interestingly, Alberta, in the sort of charter of the Council of the Federation, has asked for formalized written agreement on the provincial role in international negotiations, agreement, and fora, and that provinces have a formal role to play in those fora and when the issues are within their jurisdiction. So that is a pretty tall order, and I gather from speaking to former colleagues at Foreign Affairs that that's perhaps a hard thing to do. One of the things that guides them is that there be no harm to the equity of provinces in terms of the decisions that get made on this issue of provinces in international affairs, and that there be no undermining of the federal role. But I gather it's starting to creep into the lexicon of discussions for Alberta, at least amongst some, that energy is our UNESCO, which is a scary sort of thing to hear. And I'm not sure it's really realistic. It makes a nice little forward phrase, but energy is obviously not exclusively produced in Alberta and not exclusively consumed in Alberta. And when you think about energy issues where Alberta wants to have this bigger role and is using the sort of the charter of the Council of the Federation to move that, push that along, it's not as an easy a case as the UNESCO one. So where would they, in practical terms, like what are their UNESCOs, if you like? Perhaps the International Energy Agency, the Canada-U.S. Bilateral Energy Working Group, or the North American Energy Working Group of the increasingly important Security and Prosperity Partnership. It was Ambassador Cellucci this morning who said the Security and Prosperity Partnership, NAFTA Plus. Now, I don't know if that's right, and he's a former ambassador now, and he can speak more freely. I'm not sure that's my interpretation, but anyway, it's perhaps that Alberta would like to have the kind of role that Quebec has in UNESCO in the North American Energy Working Group of the Security and Prosperity Partnership. Now, interestingly, so we come back, what is the current government's reaction to this demand? We have a Prime Minister from Calgary, the heart of the oil patch in Alberta, and in the Throne from the speech in April, is written that we will facilitate provincial participation in the development of Canadian positions that affect areas of provincial responsibilities. So you see a little bit of slippage between that language and the language in the Council of Federation document. And maybe he's trying to give himself a little bit of wiggle room, I don't know. Just quickly, how much time do I have at this point? 3 minutes. Okay, great. Okay. So we naturally, the thing that people talk about and that makes headlines to the extent that these kind of issues make headlines has to do with conflict. But it's really important to note that there's a lot of non-conflictual development elements to the provinces and foreign policy, and those are probably always there, regardless of where the pendulum is on this issue of federalism. Right now, the provinces are playing a big role vis-a-vis missions. They're assisting Canada on these foreign missions. You'll remember that there were big Team Canada outings under the Chrétien government. Those haven't happened for a number of years now. So there's a void there with these minority governments where a lot of ministers and government MPs can't travel. The federal government is not doing missions, so the provinces, their people in the field report they're getting quite exhausted by the number of provincial delegations coming through China and now increasingly India. But a provincial premier, can help Canada in terms of a profile and advancing our economic interests abroad. In terms of offices, co-locations are the way things have been going in the last 5-10 years. Ontario closed all its offices. It had 18 standalone offices in '93. Bob Rae closed them all. You can see he was into deficit fighting. And now there are 7 co-located offices. That means offices in Canadian missions, and I gather there will soon be 10. I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but you know, if you've got to give you a little scoop, as small as it is. Alberta has 9 offices. 7 of them are co-locations, and not surprisingly, very consistent with everything we've said and heard. Quebec has 30 offices, and 7 of those are co-locations. Of the other 7 provinces, comme Madame Baudouin expliqué,
As Madame Baudouin explained, New Brunswick has an international presence, but when you think of the other provinces, only BC is involved, but not by much. So that leaves us, when we talk about international relations and provinces, we're talking of Quebec, followed by Alberta and Ontario. And we can say that Ontario,
international actor, because it's the 2nd largest government in Canada, and its ministries are involved in mapping and natural resources and so on. So you can be very involved in international activities, but not have them all structured in a ministry like Madame Baudouin used to head, for example. So Ontario is not completely aware of all the things it does internationally, but in this day and age we live in, it's actually the ultimate model of a subnational government's international activities, which is not pursuing a proto-diplomatic project, which is to say trying to become a country in its own right. So we have, as the title of our panel, Provinces and Foreign Policy, a New Federalism. There's obviously a pendulum that swings back and forth. We have our representatives in the federal bureaucracy saying, you know, we look at these things in terms of no harm to the equity of provinces, no undermining of the federal role. And so far as me talking about everything other than Quebec, we'll see if that's possible given Alberta's requests in the energy field. Thank you.